Good evening, and happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday weekend. And we are going to go ahead and get started at 6 o'clock. So as you are coming in, you know what to do. I want you to comment and let me know where you're watching from. Then I want you to tag someone and share this video, because tonight we will be sharing part 8 of the pivot conversations, and it's going to be good. So again, as you come in, I ask that you simply comment, let me know where you're watching from, and then tag someone in the comments or share this video with someone, because part 8 is going to be really good tonight. And this is actually going to be the final segment of our pivot conversations. So you want to, invite somebody in. It's going to be helpful to anybody who watches it, actually. I want you to have your pens and papers ready so you can take some notes, or your tablet or your phone, however you take your notes. Just be ready to take a few notes on tonight. So as you're coming in, I ask that you comment and let me know where you're watching from. Next, I want you to tag someone, share this video, invite somebody to watch this video. And we're going to get ready to get started at 6 o'clock. Again, I hope you all had a wonderful holiday weekend. I hope you all had an opportunity to rest from your labor on yesterday, that you had an opportunity to do what makes you happy, whatever that is. I hope that you had an opportunity to have some balance in your life, because I know that we can get caught up in the day-to-day functions of life, the day-to-day list of to-do things. But I hope yesterday you had an opportunity to just relax, breathe, have some me time, have an opportunity to do whatever you wanted to do. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started at 6 o'clock. It is 6 o'clock. It is the top of the hour. So I want to say good evening to each of you who have jumped in on this live with me on this evening. And I also want to thank those of you who will be watching the replay. Whoever you are, you'll be watching the replay. And if you're catching it on the replay, just type replay in the comments. I'm not sure if this is your first time tuning in, or if you are returning for another pivot conversation. And it may sound a little redundant to those of you who've been tuned in for a while, but for the sake of the newcomers, I want to share that I have been teaching on the word pivot since last month. I've been doing this teaching since last month. And guess what, guys? Tonight, we're going to continue talking about the purpose of the pivot, but tonight is the last teaching on this subject. Tonight is the last pivot conversation that I'm doing here on Facebook Live. Okay, tonight is the last one, and I didn't realize it would end so soon, but I thank all of you who have joined in on the conversations, whether you watched it live or whether you watched the replay. Hey, Betty, good evening. Good to see you. So we have covered a lot of information in the last 7 segments of the pivot conversations, and I want to dive in quickly. But before I do that, let me give you a quick explanation of pivot. Again, if this is your first time tuning in, you can check out the previous 7 segments on my Facebook page, or you can go directly to my YouTube channel, the Change Navigator, and I have uploaded them. Hey, Anjanette. Hey, Lily. Good to see you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. So we have been talking about the word pivot, and I'm sure you are very familiar with that word, hey, Keisha, as it has been the popular buzzword during this pandemic. It has been used synonymously in reference to adapting to the current environment, like working from home, changing careers, or figuring out a way to be more effective but with less, or even opening up a new business or creating new streams of income. Pivoting from face-to-face to virtual learning for our students and our educators. There's been so many references to the word pivot. Pivot during the pandemic. Pivot into new possibilities. If you go on LinkedIn, they have even shared something about pivot, and they ask you if you want to pivot into a new career. Regardless of how many times the word pivot is used, or regardless to how many times the pivot word is used with another P word attached to it, the meaning is still the same. In its simplest terms and for the purpose of what I'm discussing, according to dictionary.com, pivot means to turn on. The other definition it provided as it relates to basketball is to keep one foot in front of the other in place while holding the ball and moving one foot one step in another direction, in any direction. So I remember when I started learning how to play basketball and about the fundamentals of the game in middle school, my coach at the time was the late Mrs. Frances Leday. She taught us to pivot, especially when we were trapped in the corner facing a turnover. So we understand what it means to pivot. We understand that it simply means to turn or to reposition, But what is the purpose of the pivot? What is the purpose of the turn? What is the purpose of the repositioning? So far, I've shared 7 purposes of the pivot, and tonight I'm going to give you the 8th purpose. But let's recap the first 7 purposes. So number 1, the purpose of the pivot is to give you extra space to think and to create. Number 2, the purpose of the pivot is to give you an alternative. Anytime a problem presents itself, the solution is also present. The alternative. Hey, Andrea, the purpose of the pivot is to see something differently. Number 4, the purpose of the pivot is to get you out of trouble. Number 5, the purpose of the pivot is to give you a little breathing room before making a bad or impulsive decision. Number 6, the purpose of the pivot is to give you a little extra time. And number 7, the purpose of the pivot is to become open if you are trapped. So tonight we are going to focus on number 8. The pivot will help you react in a pressured situation while viewing it from different angles. The pivot will help you to react in a pressured situation while viewing it from different angles. So let me remind you that I formulated these references as it relates to learning how to play basketball, but they can be applied to real life, particularly to making changes in your life. So I posted about the purpose of the pivot. I posted it 15 weeks ago. I went back today to look at the original post, and I posted it 15 weeks ago on my Facebook page. And a good friend of mine, that's where I got number 8 from, Coach Edwina Brown. She's a former WNBA player. She commented and said, the pivot will help you react in a pressured situation while viewing it from different angles. So I think I said in episode 5 or 6 that I'm working on something called pivoting under pressure. So this teaching tonight will give you a glimpse of what that will entail. So let's talk about reacting in a pressured situation. Before we delve into that, let's address the thought. First of all, it's good to be proactive, all right? I stand on that. I believe it. That's the purpose of having goals. That's the purpose of having plans, New Year's resolutions. That's the purpose of having insurance, to be proactive and to be in control of situations or in control of outcomes. And many times we see things happen in our society and we generally react. The reality is there are some things that we just aren't prepared for, but the incident in which we react will cause us to develop a plan to be proactive. Does that make sense? All right. So for instance, there are new protocols in place for active shooters. They are in place in our schools and even in our places of employment. I remember going through active shooter training. And this was in response to so many active shooter incidents in our country. The country reacted to it by implementing trainings and protocols as a way of being proactive and saving lives if the same circumstances were to present themselves in the future. We are also reactive when it comes to our health. I know it's a touchy subject, right? But it takes one bad report from the doctor, one injury that takes you a long time to recover from, which actually reveals a different type of underlying condition. Then you become reactive by committing to more exercise or a different way of eating. And once you implement the exercise and different way of eating, you then become proactive against things down the line, right? Okay, good. But it first starts with a reaction. And again, how can we be proactive when we don't know the future? How can we plan for something we may never experience or something we don't even know we'll encounter? By being proactive. Proactivity requires knowing the facts or paying attention to the trends, along with incorporating our imagination and creativity to hopefully produce a desired result. Okay? So when we are proactive, we try to shape the outcome to be a favorable one, or at least one we can live with. Again, when we set goals at the beginning of the year, when we make our New Year's resolutions, or maybe when we set goals, when we become inspired, we are being proactive because we are trying to shape our lives into what we want, what we value, what we can enjoy. But what happens when being proactive doesn't prepare you for the traps? What happens when being proactive doesn't take into account the barriers? I remember years ago when I was learning how to play basketball and we ran plays in practice. We executed the plays. We knew the first option. We knew the second option, third option, and so on. And we would go through the plays until they were memorized. We knew how to respond. We knew how to respond when there was no pressure. We knew how to respond when there was no opposition. The true test came when you were facing opposition, when there was pressure. We were proactive in practice. We were proactive when it was easy, but when we were facing opposition, we had to react. And many times in our lives, we can do things when it's easy. But the question is, how do you react when you are facing opposition? How do you react when things are hard? How do you react when you are facing a challenge? The pivot, according to Coach Brown, will help you react in a pressured situation while viewing it from different angles. So, if a pivot in its simplest form means to turn or to reposition, you give yourself an opportunity to turn or reposition in order to react in a pressured situation while viewing it from different angles. So let's go back to practice. We execute the plays, but we're not under pressure. The most pressure we have is when our teammates who know the play also play defense against us. But it still doesn't compare to real-time game pressure. The pivot will help you react in game time, in a pressured situation, while viewing it from different angles. So, have you ever had an opportunity to view your problem, which may be a crisis, from different angles? Have you ever taken the time to do that? Or do you only look at it from your perspective? I know a few years ago, there was this very popular saying, and it was on t-shirts, it was on bracelets, it was on bumper stickers, WWJD. What would Jesus do? So therefore, some may say, well, yes, I view my problems from another perspective. But what about those of you who don't agree with that philosophy? Do you only see your problems from a one-dimensional lens requiring a one-dimensional solution? Or do you view it from different angles in order to make a better, more informed decision that will yield results? Our ability to react comes from instinct. Okay? Our ability to react comes from instinct. It comes from our fight or flight response. Our ability to react is innate. Our ability to react comes from wanting to avoid pain, discomfort, and embarrassment. Our ability to react comes from wanting to survive. All right? It comes from wanting to survive. So when you react, you survive. But when you're proactive, you thrive. I'm going to say that again. When you react, you survive. But when you are proactive, you thrive. Guess what, guys? There are times when the best thing you can do is simply survive. There are times when That's your only option, is to survive. And many of us, the best thing we could do during this pandemic is survive. Many of us have been reactive. We've made adjustments. We've learned how to view things from different angles. We have responded under pressure. And here we are. We're still here in the middle of this pandemic, but we are surviving it. At this point, I didn't want to give you any answers tonight, but I just wanted you to think. I want you to really do some searching and some evaluating. I want you to dig deep. And so this is what I want to ask you. How do you view your problems or your situation? Do you view it from a one-dimensional lens? Or do you incorporate the WWJD thought? Do you incorporate the perspective of others, particularly those who have survived the situation you are currently in? Okay, so this is your homework as I end these pivot conversations. All right, after each segment, I give homework, I give assignments, something for you to go back and work through. So here's what I want you to do. Number one, look at your biggest problem right now. Look at your biggest problem right now. Number two, what is your plan to solve this problem? What is your plan to solve this problem? Number three, this is what I want you to do. This may get some people out of their comfort zone of not wanting people to know their business. But number three, talk to others you know you can trust who've been in a similar situation. Talk to others you know you can trust who've been in a similar situation. Number four, get their feedback, but only pull out what you need to incorporate into your solution. Get their feedback, but only pull out what you need to incorporate into your solution. All right, that is it for my teachings on these pivot conversations. I hope that you all have enjoyed them. Again, if you have not checked them out, there are 7 other teachings, 7 others that came before this. And I want to ask you a question tonight. How have you enjoyed these pivot conversations? How have they helped you? Number 2, which teaching resonated with you the most? Which teaching resonated with you the most? And number 3, have you been able to implement any strategies from these teachings? Okay, that's what I want to know. I really need your feedback, because I don't want to keep getting on here with information that you don't need. I don't want to keep getting on here with stuff that's not helping you. So I would really appreciate your feedback. If you enjoyed them, just give me a few thumbs up, give me some likes, let me know you enjoyed it. I'm waiting to see the comments. I understand that sometimes the video is ahead of the comments. So I would love to know if you enjoyed this, if it helped you. If you have any questions that you want me to address one-on-one, feel free to email me at thechangenavigator@gmail.com. If you haven't already, I ask that you go and follow the Facebook page, The Change Navigator, because I want to eventually transition to doing these videos, this self-help stuff. I want to do it from that page. This page is, I kind of have 2 things going on this personal page right now, but I would really like to focus more of the self-help Change Navigator stuff on the Change Navigator page. Okay, Edora, your favorite podcast was the Spare Change podcast. Okay, I appreciate that. That's another thing, guys. I have a podcast. I drop new episodes every Tuesday. I started it in August, and so far there are 6 episodes that are up and running. And Edora likes the Spare Change. I think that's episode 3, if I'm not mistaken. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at _change_navigator. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Change Navigator. As I said, I will not be doing any more teachings on the pivot conversations on this page after tonight. I ask that you share this content with someone. I am preparing something called Pivoting Under Pressure, and that will be offered to those of you who really want to get more in-depth knowledge about this and get more in-depth understanding, and just want to dig a little deeper about pivoting under pressure. So I'll let you know when I'm dropping that teaching. And that's it. That's all I have for tonight. Any questions or comments? Again, when I do these conversations, I don't want them to last long because I value your time and I don't want to take up all of your time. So if there are no more questions or comments, I ask that if you have not, go and like the Change Navigator page. It's a separate page from this one. And follow me there, and I'll be posting more information there. And again, I thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you all for getting on this journey with me and having these pivot conversations with me. And I look forward to receiving feedback from you all. Again, you can email me at thechangenavigator@gmail.com, or you can DM me. Love the podcast. You listen to it on your morning runs, and they give you great food for thought. Thanks, Danita Franklin. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who have shared the video tonight, not just tonight, but all of the other segments. I appreciate you for your support and for your kindness and for getting the word out. All right. I really want to help people. So again, if there are no more questions or comments, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Dr. Harris, for listening to the podcast, and that they are great food for thought for you as well. Thank you so much for your feedback. So again, thanks guys for your comments and your feedback and your support. And until the next time, you all have a wonderful, wonderful night.